That's a good thing. Already. Time flies, 10 minutes left. At least I can see you. Everybody unsettled? All right, we'll just start.
Mm-hmm.
So, this talk's a little different than normal. It's muted already. Is that all right? Can you hear me? No? I just speak into the microphone here. Still hear me? Oh, there we go. Hey, that's better.
How's my level? Can you hear me?
He was loud up here. I'm going to try and put this in my pocket.
Okay.
Right. So this talk's a little different than normal. Rather than come up here and go, this is this great thing we've built, we've realized that there's a bit of a problem with Drupal at the moment that we need to kind of fix, and we're going to explain why and why we should fix it, and hopefully what benefits we can get from it.
And we're on a journey. This is part 3 of Same Image, Different Story. We have covered this at Drupal Camp Scotland and Drupal Camp England, and each time the people in the session gave us feedback, and some of that feedback has gone into what we're going to present today.
And there's new ideas as well, and there's some new slides. So it's not same talk, it's different talk. Anyway, we are here because we're subject matter experts, apparently. There's some others in the room, thankfully, as well. But I'm the one that's hiding behind Jamie. Jamie takes a lot of ignoring, so I'm here as well. I was actually there. We've got slides that you can follow along with. There's a lot of links towards the later on issues that you can follow, and various resources. And I'll post them into somebody's phoning me. Good luck with the talk. Oh, brilliant. So yeah, it's worth grabbing them. I'll stick them into the Slack Dev Days channel as well, so you can get them. But this is what we're going to cover today. Why editors are uploading duplicate images beyond alt text. This affects focal point and cropping too, so it's not just an accessibility issue. Okay. There is a solution at the moment, but we think it should probably evolve a bit, and it needs a lot of work. And then we're going to outline how we're going to get this into core and what you guys can do to help us, hopefully. So, media module was added to Drupal 8, and then media library was added to Drupal 8.6, bringing the promise of the ability to reuse images. And then shortly after that, we realized that actually just reusing those images isn't just enough. And we kind of have picked this person to highlight the problem. This is Maria Mercuri. She's not just a woman with blonde hair and a striped shirt. Depending on which article you've written, this could be an image that's accompanying a story about who won Best Actress at Cannes. Could be about her singing career. Could be an article about the podium mics. It could be, her activism against the Greek junta. It might be an article about the Parthenon marbles, not the Elgin marbles. We gave them back. She's been a minister of culture, but she's also a great woman of Athens. So
Maria's worn many hats, so depending on what the article is about, we want to set that alt text to be relevant.
So, and it's not just us that thinks this. You know, there's some big names up there. Harvard have said how to describe images. There's the Nielsen Group have talked about alt text and how it needs to be contextual. WebAIM have a lot of stuff about writing contextual alt text. The University of Edinburgh have produced some stuff as well, which is where I'm from. And there's a very sweary YouTube clip from a really good person that talks about alt text and whether you should use decorative images or whether you should just be generic with your content. So, this is another one. This is Princeton. This is their accessibility training, where they talk about writing contextual alt text. Basically, there's some stories about whether you're climbing Mount Everest, whether it's a geological thing. The alt text needs to reflect what the meaning of the image is. It's not just, they say an image speaks 1,000 words, but also the alt text needs to reflect why that image was chosen and what it means in the context of the article. This is that Harvard article, and this is the bit that I consider the important bit for this talk, which is considering the context. 2 use cases here, 2 blog posts. One, Spring is Here, and one is about the famous residents of Hollis Hall. They've used the same image, and I'm about to show you a demo of trying to do that in Drupal, but the alt text is very different in their use cases. And this is what happens when you try and do that in Drupal. This is Drupal CMS. It is copy and paste. I'm not using AI to get this stuff, but the alt text is literally lifted from their article. I think it shows some good text. There we go. Save it. You'll notice that the focal point brings it into points at where the image is meant to be kind of the important bit, but however, if you try and reuse that image, put the description in, write a second article. I put the focal point on this and changed it because I wanted to highlight, it's difficult to see what the alt text is, but obviously if you change the alt text and then change the focal point, that changes, makes this relevant to this article now. It's about Hollis Hall, there we go. However, that also changes the alt text and the image focal point on the original image. So updating the image updates it everywhere. So we saw the ability to reuse images, which is what Media Library promised, but updating the alt text and the focal point changes those attributes everywhere. And just for reference, that's what the alt text said. And then if you had used AI alt text, because it's generating the alt text based on just the image, you get quite a generic bit of text, and it's not really relevant to either of the stories. Okay, so current workaround on what I think UX studies have found is editors are getting around this. We've got this wonderful tool of being able to upload images, and you can certainly use the same image more than once and have the focal point pointing to the right bit, but you end up with an image library that's just full of the same image, just repeatedly uploaded and tweaked based on your use case, which is not what the image library was for, I don't think. So yeah, brought that promise, but not really delivering. There was also a use case where you can set images to be decorative, which and there is very valid use cases for that. So if the text surrounding the image, for example, is explaining what is in the image, then you don't actually need alt text. If it's not conveying anything, if it's just a border or something like that, then you might want to leave that alt text blank. So there is very valid use cases. However, if you do use a decorative image toggle, switch it off, get rid of the alt text, what you might end up finding is a lot of images in your image library where a screen reader user might not be able to tell what the image is. And in actual fact, if you're quite vague about what the image is for, then you might actually find that the alt text doesn't help either. You might end up with this, where all your alt text is handsome man with a grey hair and beard. And if they all say that, it's going to be difficult to determine, and you can only guess what those images are. It's not me, I promise. But you would never tell, never tell which one of them was the actual handsome man with grey hair and beard. Anyway, but we've got Canvas coming out, and we can drop stuff and do stuff. But as you'll see, even if you use Canvas, you can add media, and it's still using the media entity and the media upload functionality. So same issue kind of exists. It's not going to be fixed there. What am I doing here? Yeah, this is same thing. There's no way to actually override the images. It's still media library. So same problem. I think this is where we'll hand over to you. Yeah. So this isn't a new problem. This has been around in the community. It's been identified, but the image, this issue has been postponed for a long time. And I think the important bit is, what does it say? I can't read it. It has a go wonky.
Therefore, given both the need for the feature and the lack of direction or a plan for core inclusion, I think what might be best is to postpone this issue. And I think that was 4 years ago when we started this journey, so it's coming up for 5 years ago now.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, should have updated the slides. This is your bit.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned, this is a journey. We're not at the destination by any means. So, how do we define the best practice and approach? Because until we know what the best practice is, we can't really develop anything unless we know where we're aiming. So I chose this diagram because I think this is a non-linear process. We've seen already with responsive preview and ECA that building really complex architecture is not a straight line. You'll go back and forth, up and down, and learn along the way. And the first time that I met Gareth was during the Starshot initiative, when I did some research as part of that into problems that people have with the media library. So I'm just going to talk about that briefly. So the first thing to say is I've gone back and forth between a state of confusion and then thinking I understand the problems and the solutions, and then another requirement comes along and I'm confused again. And I don't think I'm at the end of that process. That will keep going. But one of the reasons that this is confusing for people is that the advice from trusted sources like gov.uk and Harvard is conflicting. So in some cases, we're advised to give a literal description, as in this case, and in other cases, as we said, we're advised that we should use contextual alt text. One of the pieces of feedback from Drupal Camp England was, where is the evidence that this is the right way to do things? Don't just take our word for it. This is a great article on the WebAIM website, which lists lots and lots of examples of different situations you might find yourself with trying to use alt text and how you might go about making that choice. But very importantly, there's no right or wrong answer, so it gives advice and guidance, but it doesn't tell you what the alt text should be because it depends on your case. And icons as well as images. In this case, the literal description of this might be that it's the world or a globe, but this could represent international students, it could be a region selector, be to do with global shipping, or all sorts of other things. So to touch on the Starshot research, first of all, we compiled a questionnaire. It was biased because it was the Drupal community mainly that responded. But this came up time and again as a problem that people had, not being able to work easily with media in Drupal. And in the local Gov Drupal project, similarly, it's a problem that Maria and others have been trying to tackle for quite some time, and there are workarounds. I spoke to Hammersmith and Fulham Council, Chicken, Brighton and Hove Council, my colleagues at Anatech, Agile Collective, and since then, lots of other people about their cases and their solutions. There are workarounds, but this keeps coming up time and again as something that we really need to solve properly in Drupal once and for all. So as well as this alt text problem, people are struggling with cropping. That's something that kept coming up over and over again, and also navigating the image library. So we need to think about solutions that don't just solve one problem, but help to solve all of those problems for people. And as part of Starshot, I also did some competitor analysis. These are the list of content management systems where I played with how they use media, and I took quite a lot from it. I learned that Drupal is very sophisticated. It has the power to do things, but other tools are much more intuitive to use for editors. So just a quick demo here of, I think this one was Wix. And one thing they do really well, I think, is selecting aspect ratios. That's a lot easier than I think it is in Drupal, so there's some learnings that we can take from that. But whether we like it or not, AI is something that is out there. It's already out of the bag, so we need to be thinking towards when we're thinking about architecture. What might we want to do with images in 2 years, in 5 years? So this demonstration, as you'll see, didn't go very well at all. But at some point, this will work well, and we'll want to use it. So when we come back to the architecture, this is one of the cases. After a very, very long time, we basically come back with some AI slop, as you'll see. Aspect ratios is one thing we need to consider. Front-end performance, we want to deliver fast websites as well. And one problem that we have at the moment is being able to use images in grids, which Canvas, on the one hand, could be part of the solution too. And we also need to think about inertia and bias. We live in a bit of a bubble, so we're talking to each other in the Drupal community a lot. So it's really useful to look at systems outside of Drupal to see how they're doing things and talk to people to figure out what the best solution is. So,
yeah, there is a solution. I've pieced together this module cocktail that enables us to actually do contextual images and cropping and focal points and things, but there's a lot of kind of cognitive load to go through to get this to work properly. Even banging your head off the wall for a couple of days to realise that actually once you've installed everything, you need to run module update for some reason. Weird things. And there is a solution also for the image crop, which I believe local gov Drupal use. Yeah, so the difference obviously is you've got contextual crop, focal point adapter, and then this one uses image widget crop adapter. So, yeah. But the demo now becomes a bit different when you install all those things and you kind of stick in your image. That's a very literal alt text, so that when you're in your image library, image editors can actually see that and understand what the actual description is. And then when I choose that, when I write my article, is my mic again away? Yeah, you can then, once you go in and you edit the image this time, you can put in your literal, your relevant alt text, change the preview, change the crop so that it works specific to this image, publish that, and then you can see that that works. This time, however, when you go and write your second one, it's the same process as before. Same articles, just reset with the new image process. This time when I edit this, rather than editing the original image, this is editing an instance of it, as it were, and you can see that without much, they're different, without any hassle. So what we saw there was the actual ability to reuse images. What we saw is contextual overrides for both the alt text and the focal point, and that would work with decorative images because the decorative image information is saved with the contextual image, not with the original. It leaves the stuff intact. So yeah, this becomes more of a problem about, well, primarily architecture. We think there's a better way of even than doing that. But it also becomes language. So how do you convey to people that you're not updating the original, and if they want to do the original, they need to go somewhere else, or if you're just doing it here, you need to edit. This is contextually editing that image, and there is ways. You're editing the ways to let people know that you're editing the default, not the the context and what have you. This crop affects non-overrided images. There you go. But this isn't a new pattern either. We've got that kind of stuff in views where you can, override it for this instance, override or refer to the default, or you can use, the default one. So I don't think it's a really difficult problem to solve. It's just one we need to figure out the UI for, or the UX for even. And we thought also we can create a new transition maybe.
So what about other contextual entities? Because this isn't even just a problem for media. Sometimes we want to reuse, or not reuse, sometimes we have lots and lots of descriptions and summaries of content. We have on the page, perhaps as an introduction, a parent page as a link and summary, maybe on the home page, in a news article kind of block, and open graph, Google search, meta tags, all those things. Wouldn't it be lovely if we didn't need 4 or 5 or 6 different summary fields to be able to achieve all those things? And we need to think about revisions and languages. One of the dead ends that we went down was thinking that multilingual has already solved this problem, because that is a context. A different language is a different context of the same content. But then when we applied it to the cases, it didn't pass the test because a language is tied to an entity. You wouldn't reuse it on 3 different nodes, the same content. And when you take into account views and blocks and possibly wanting to override heading levels, because on your page there's already a heading level that matches what's in your content. It's elephants all the way down. It's a kind of an infinite problem. So it's not just media where we need to look at this. So thinking about architecture, we want to achieve an efficient architecture. At the moment, if I transform this square into all these things, I have to do that over and over again, even if the output is effectively the same. So we want to think about architectures where we can transform something once and reuse it. And if we want a different transformation, we can create that from the original and then reuse those. We had lots and lots of working notes, lots of questions and problems to solve, and we've come up with a couple of different candidates and even hybrid candidates. So catchy working titles for what this thing might become are entity instances and transformations. But I'm sure we're not at the end of that process either. So how might an entity instance work? Well, essentially it's making a copy of the original that references the original image. And wouldn't it be lovely as well to be able to see all the other instances where that image was used? So this is just an illustration. It could be a list. It could be any number of ways to display this information. But we're thinking in terms of being able to work with your transformation and see all the other instances that exist for it in one place. There are lots and lots of factors to take into account, so this is just one of them. What happens if the site builder deletes a field and we've got all these transformations of it already? We want some kind of validation in there before they go ahead, and then probably we'll want to delete all those child instances as well. There are lots and lots of user stories and lots of scenarios that we need to consider to come up with the right model. So how would a twig template get the right instance? What would happen in caching? How would people draft, review, and publish content? What happens if there's a nesting of references where we've got a transformed media entity inside a transformed node, for example? So that led us down an alley, really, of unworkable complexity and a horrible UI where we've just got so much information that we can't really get on with our work. So again, this is a very kind of rough sketch of how this might work. Rather than overriding the whole entity, choosing a set of fields, maybe that's configurable, where you can say, I only want to override the alt text on my nodes, or maybe I want to do that and be able to crop as well. So this is just a rough example of how that kind of might look in the UI. And being able to see that then back in our media library, perhaps the attribution isn't overridable because the copyright information is always going to be the same for that information. But what we've got here is a contextual alt text that we can edit and reuse.
Just so that you know, that looks very different on our screen because those white boxes are actually grayed out to indicate that those fields are disabled because you can't edit the disabled ones, but the alt text is contextual, so it's shown as a field you can actually edit.
Which is a lesson in don't use colour to convey meaning.
No, of course. So this comes back to the alt text kind of thing that I showed, and it's, I guess, a way to highlight why this could be really useful. If you notice down there, the AI kind of just looked at the image in isolation and came up with something generic. But if you can actually give AI alt text an enhanced prompt, I took these rules from the AI alt text module and I wrapped it in some stuff and then sent an LLM off to go and fetch a specific URL, the two URLs that we'd previously created, and I gave it a bit more instructions to kind of say, ignore the alt text that's already set there, generate some new stuff, and just for reference, that's what the AI alt text, if you haven't seen it, that's what it looks like. There's some interesting things in there, identify photographs. I think that might actually conflict a wee bit with avoid using image of, and you'll see that the alt text that came back was a lot more relevant to the actual article that it was. So just given some contextual information, the actual LLM will actually produce more relevant alt text. Whether or not it's actually useful, that's not for me to decide. But it's certainly better than you get without the context, and certainly a lot better than no alt text. It actually gave me reasoning, even though the wording kind of said, just give me the alt text, don't give me anything else. But it still came up with a whole bunch of stuff and reasoning. And it kind of shows that it's actually interrogating the text that's on the page and taking meaning from the headings and stuff like that. And that's the reasoning for the other one as well, graphy text. But interesting that it did mention in those that it was taking into consideration the original alt text, which I told it to ignore. So don't trust AI. That's my... Oh, no, this is just it. Right.
So, as we've mentioned, this talk evolves over time.
Yeah.
And it's a working experiment where we're coming up with ideas and working on things in the week before, the hour before, and while we're setting up here at the
one of us is in a meeting, one of us texting.
So we're going to do a little role play to illustrate how that might look. So, hello media.
Hello entity. How you doing? Who are you and how can I help you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm a node actually, and I'd like to use your image, please.
Absolutely. This is the image. Here you go. It has the alt text of handsome man with grey hair. Would you like to use that?
No thanks actually, because the content around my image is already conveying that meaning. So I'd like to set this one to a decorative image, please.
Okay. Here's a transformation for you.
Act 2.
Act 2.
Hello media.
Hello entity. Who are you and how can I help you?
I'm actually an LLM, and I'd like to use your image. I already have the title and the text of a node.
Okay, well I have this image. It's got handsome man with grey hair and also a transformation that's set as decorative. Would you like to use either of those?
No thanks actually. What I'm going to do is use the title and the text and the context of my content to create some relevant alt text in all the languages that we have on our site. And then I'm also going to set all those nodes to draft so that AI-generated alt text can be reviewed by a human.
Well, that's a fantastic idea. Here's another transformation.
Thank you.
Ta-da! We've had the 10 minutes, so we need to quick.
So the media management dream really is to have contextual overrides. There are these other things that we want to consider as well. If we come back to 5 years ago now, this postponed issue, the issue described a set of
kind of criteria that we need to actually progress this quite a lot more. So we were trying to think about how this path to core will become a thing that actually starts moving again, and we can unpostpone some of these issues.
So the dream is every image we think should have a minimum of 2 alt text if it's being used in content. One for the media library only, for editors to be able to find it there, and one that's contextual to go with the content that it's used in. And here are those criteria. So any feature like this must clear the core UX and accessibility gates. Well, as we know, we already aren't meeting those accessibility gates in core. So things can only get better on that front. The media team knows from hard experience it's best to come up with a plan first, with close guidance from and collaboration with UX and ALI folks before implementing anything. What we need to continue is probably dedicated funding and time from the media team, UX team, accessibility experts to come up with a version of this feature that would be suitable for core. Well, I think the funding might be a unicorn, but I think we're starting to come up with a plan. So the target, review and sign off from usability and accessibility teams, a fix or at least a plan for multilingual, for translation issues, automated tests so we can make sure the functionality works in as many scenarios as possible. So I think the next stage for us is to write those tests to make sure that whatever we come up with meets all those things we need to meet. Plans, fixes, and testing of what other integration bugaboos we don't know about yet. We're never going to get it right first time, so we want to start developing and iterating this. So what we probably need next is a prototype of this solution with working and tested support for translation, moderation, layout builders, some of the other things, and then there would be a really strong case for inclusion in core.
So this comes around to where this is the ask of the talk and the kind of the crux of it. The only true wisdom consists of this is some guy local, I think. But every time I think of that, the next thought is actually, dude, that's us. We don't know enough. So yeah, we need to kind of start storyboarding stuff. We need to get user stories and diagrams together. We're not necessarily the people to do that. We need other people involved in this. We need use cases to solve. We need to review these when we have them. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get this prototype kind of ready.
And as well to have back-end specialists have a look at what we're proposing and see if there are any crocodiles lurking that we should look out for before we get
better ideas.
Yeah.
Please, we'd rather have them, that better ideas that could actually come to fruition rather than just picking this because we've chosen it. Because, dude, we know nothing. But also, the stuff that we've got, try them out. The image widget crop and the focal point modules, play with them. I've built a recipe for the focal point stuff, so feel free to download that and have a play and see if that, see if there's other workflows that fixes. I've only tested it out with image crop and alt text and also the decorative image stuff, but I'm sure there's other stuff that could be good.
And once again, you can't see the colours, but this is how far along I think we are on this journey. I think we've got the best practices probably nailed by now. We've got an idea of the UX, the UI, and the architecture, and now we want to just round those off and start to actually build things.
Yeah, the modules that we've got, while they are a kind of a working solution, they're not long-term solutions. This isn't even, it's minimally maintained. And that's just one part of that module cocktail, and it doesn't even kind of work in the proper media way. So, like I said, there's a lot of configuration to get that working, so I'd really rather not have to keep using this solution. So this is what the actions are. Let's see if we can improve on what we have, collaborate on what we want tomorrow, implement things in the wild, and then just kind of complain about them and bang the drum about this issue. If you do any work on it, tag it with Dev Days Athens. And then there's a whole bunch of references for those that want the slides. These are all the articles. This is the module list. These are issues that I've been poring over to try and get my head around what's going on with this. Local Gov Drupal, another book. Some of the research that was done. Drupal CMS initiatives, AI initiative is always kind of needs to be mentioned. And that's it. I'll go back. I'll put them in the Dev Day channel.
Question here?
Sure.
Maybe more of a comment than a question, to be honest. I'm reflecting over the fact that we've been trying to solve this problem in different ways for 15 plus, maybe even 20 years. And it's always about solving it in the CMS or in the editor or people publishing content. And the using the LLM to create context to the image is a smart step in the right direction, but I'm thinking more the permanent solution going forward is in maybe the browser having the LLM and assigning the alt text to images as the viewer is viewing the site instead of the publisher.
Well, I guess the best person to assign context to that image would be the editor, because they will know exactly what they want the image to reflect, why they've chosen that image, why they've done that. The browser's not going to have any. It will be able to.
The browser will have an AI.
Yeah.
And read the context of the article, see the picture.
Some context, but I don't know that you're removing the human in the loop there. What if it comes up with 2 or 3 kind of sort of relevant but not perfect?
But we still haven't solved it. We're still trying to solve this issue. So maybe the problem isn't to be solved within this area, it's on the other end.
Yeah, I've heard Jamie talk about that idea as well, and I think that's something that will come down the line. I'm sure things like that will happen, but there are data sovereignty issues and control issues.
I guess the same argument could actually bubble up, and you just say, well, why doesn't the editor just come in and just do a random bunch of focus topics and then just let the LLM generate the blog post entirely?
Why not?
We're going to keep the faith and see what we can make happen.
We have time for one more question.
Where have you got to with making the media library more searchable? And just sort of one thought in my head is, if somebody tries to update and upload an image, can we detect this image is already here, use this one instead?
Yeah, I think one of the problems we have is we have a name field, we have a description field on documents that gets used for the label of the document. That's another problem as well that I think that we need to unmodel to make that intuitive.
And potentially, if you're thinking of a very descriptive alt text in the media library and that's not used anywhere else, that then can be part of the search. And actually, if you have a proper description there, that can you could actually look for blue jumpers, and if the alt text says blue jumper, you may not ever want to use man in a blue jumper in the blog post, but having that description there means you're going to be able to solve that searchable problem, especially if it's an instance of it. It's a very descriptive image.
And I think we've got the tools now to be able to search media in different ways, and probably to search by the color and filter by colors and all sorts of different ways. But I think the more information we have about that image, the better chance that we've got of being able to prioritize those different fields and sets of information to produce a better search.
Okay, thank you first for the talk. It's a really interesting project you have there, because it addresses actually a problem I encountered quite a lot in building Drupal sites: contextual image usage. And I'd like to make one feature suggestion which may also address the previous mentioned issue. Maybe you could use LLMs to detect image similarities. So you can search for image and also get all the search results with similar images in your media library, which would result in a drastically reduced set of images, I guess. And do you have moreover plans for using LLMs to also set dynamic focal point in your images, which would be a hassle to do manually, right?
Well, actually, one of the first iterations of this, we did have a video of an LLM watching
It was computer vision.
Yeah.
Quite old software. So I explored whether computer vision could be a way of saving us from needing to use AI to do some processing. But actually what I found is that AI is now just a lot more powerful and a lot better finding those images.
But certainly,
we've
I think if we just leave the media library and the media entities the way they are, we're never going to probably get that kind of improvement. And if we can, stop tagging images as decorative and then just leaving them as decorative everywhere, we start being able to tag more information and not necessarily use it on the front end.
Yeah. Maybe some kind of vectorization, like we do also with text, would be a feasible way to do this.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, if you can save more information in the library, then you can use more information there, and then your instances don't need to share that information everywhere. You can just save it for where it's needed.
But yeah, media library cleanup tool definitely would be very useful.
That's it.
Thank you.
Good. More things.
We'll have a 10-minute break and we'll be back.